of presenting the path. So take a moment to remember the reason you come to this class. And then try to generate an intention to use your time well, based on that reason. And you can, in addition to your intention, you can combine it with the wish that it not only benefits yourself, but that it ripples out to benefit those around you. So while our neighbors are getting settled, we'll get settled. All right, so we've been discussing, we're trying to get a view, an overview of the whole path according to, the Lam Rim, the Tibetan Buddhism, the Buddha. So this class isn't designed to go into great detail about each of these topics. It's more about giving you an opportunity to fit the pieces together so you start to see how all the different things we talk about kind of link together into a path. Because the importance of having a path, as opposed to being what's like a spiritual shopper, you kind of go around, listen to all sorts of cool things, and you kind of go, oh, I like that one, and I like that one, is that you can't really make progress, because you're not on a path. You're just kind of shopping. So, it's helpful. It's not wrong or something to learn about techniques that help you. But if you really want to settle into a particular direction, to really work with your mind or, whatever it is you're trying to do, it's helpful to have a path that's coherent so that you get from one place to the other. Otherwise, it's sort of like when you change your mind about where you're going on your GPS and so you kind of start driving someplace else and the GPS person's, the recording's going, U-turn, take a U-turn. And it keeps saying, take a U-turn until you finally tell it you're not going there anymore. But, so I got lost the other day, so it's like, I drove around for an hour, like a 4-block circle going, it's not here, I promise it's not here. I call them up, and they give me exactly the same directions as my GPS. I'm going, yeah, well, I can't see it. Can you send up a flare? I did not find it. So, anyway.
Even with the flare?
They didn't send up a flare. I don't know why. But I had to laugh at the GPS thing going, what are you doing? I'm surprised you didn't just go, what in the world are you doing? You're driving around in circles. Haven't you figured that out? So, anyway. So we were talking about how we were looking at the outline last week, that there are basically 3 major chunks that you could look at the path, the Lam Rim, the graduated path to enlightenment through. You can look at it from the point of view of goals. So if a person really just wants to make sure they have a good rebirth, then there's certain activities you focus on. And then if somebody decides, I've had enough of samsara, enough of this, I want to get out, then there are more things that you need to focus on. And then if you decide it's not enough for me to get out, I need to become completely enlightened in order to help everybody get out, then there's some more things that you need to focus on. And so it's all of the things are necessary to become enlightened. You can't, you know, but to reduce our suffering, there's the beginning steps will do that. So it's not like we have to become masters of the whole path before we see any benefits. All right, trust me, I would have no change at all. So, so we looked at sort of the overview. So now we're going to kind of go a little bit deeper into the beginner part, and we've done some of it already. So if the person who's on the beginner capacity of the path, they really want to have a good rebirth. So they're working towards the happiness of their next life. So in order to do that, they first have to recognize, you know, we have to recognize what you know, what makes a human rebirth so precious. You know, so we talked a little bit about that, you know, that we've met the teachings, we have good conditions, we have leisure time. You know, basically we're not just, our days are not just filled with survival. So we have better conditions than many human beings on the planet. So, you know, that's one of the ways you can describe a precious human rebirth. We have, for the most part, our health, our faculties are functioning, the Buddha's teachings exist. People care about each other still. It's not like we just, it's not, what, Mad Max? Or, we're not quite there yet. So, then we also need to recognize that we're impermanent, right? So we need to look at that, and everybody needs to look at that. If we want to really accomplish something in this life, we need to realize that this, you know, this body dies. So we run out of time in terms of this body, this adventure we're on. So we really want to always remember that. And it's not to be depressed or not to be, you know, it's just to help motivate us. Oh yeah, that's right. If I want, you know, it's this time of year, such a good time of year to remember this, because this is the time of year where you kind of go, gee, my resolutions for this year, they're exactly the same as last year. You know, and it's kind of like, oh, well, I guess time passes, whether I'm doing anything or not. You know, whether I'm having fun or not. Time passes, period. So, we talked a little bit about the 8 worldly concerns, you know, that we tend to be driven by, you know, trying to avoid pain and to have pleasure, trying to avoid loss and to have gain, trying to avoid criticism and to have praise, and trying to avoid notoriety and to have fame, you know, or success, you could say, you know. So, but the teachings say that if we keep being driven by things, about these concerns about this life, we don't have the long view, and we often make mistakes about what actually will be the cause of the good stuff, the pleasure and the gain and the praise and the fame or success. So in order to help us focus on trying to spend our activities in this life towards a longer goal than just success in this life, but to having like a series of good rebirths, that requires at least thinking about past and future lives, you know, keeping the door open to maybe that's true, you know. The good news is, working towards your happiness in future lives helps you in this life. You know, it increases the odds that you will be happier in this life, or at least suffer less. We also want to, in Buddhism, because this is about, Buddhism is not just about reducing your stress, period. You know, we want to look at what does it mean, you know, what are the lower realms? So we talked about the 6 realms, that they're hell beings, animal beings, hungry ghosts, human beings, demigods and god realms. And that the human realm is really the ideal place for progress, because we have just enough suffering to motivate us. We have a precious human rebirth. You know, we don't have so much suffering that all we're doing is trying to survive. But we don't just have happiness like the God realms where everything's just going good and all you do is exhaust your good karma. So we want to look at other possibilities of life with a realistic eye. You know, really understanding that when we sit there envying our cat stretched out in the sun, that it's not an ideal body. You know, it just looks good from our side, from our, you know, wanting to have that immediate sense of no stress. So we have to learn about cause and effect, karma. And this has to do with, you know, the four truths. You know, the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth that suffering can end, and the way, the method. So understanding cause and effect becomes very important. So all of these things have their own module in discovering Buddhism. You know, we have death and rebirth, we have the 12 links, we have karma, we have refuge, purification's part of karma, and pretty much everything after that. So we will go into more depth in each of these topics. So karma. So when you're just exploring the teachings, of course, you haven't gone for refuge yet, you know. So refuge actually comes later, you know, whereas you develop a confidence in the teachings of the Buddha. You have a confidence in the teachings, which are the Dharma. You have confidence that it's possible to become part of a community, that there are people who can help, and also it's possible to become a bodhisattva, you know. But the word, so cause and effect is what we call, you know, what people are, we use karma now. It's become part of the English dictionary. So it's not always used in the same way that Buddhism uses it. And then Hinduism also uses it, but then has a, you know, a different kind of meaning. They share similarities, but they're not the same. But the word karma itself is just action. It's the Sanskrit word for action. So, it doesn't matter. So specifically, when we're talking in Buddhism, karma is the intention with which we do any actions of body, speech, or mind. So our thoughts, our speech, you know, and dancing to the ringtone. So all of which are have an intention with it. Intention, you know, is sort of like why we do something, you know. But it also includes being attracted to something, you know. So intention, technically, the word intention just refers to the state of the mind that draws the mind to an object. You know, attention is the state of mind that really zeroes in after your mind's already drawn to the object. Then you pick out what it is you like or hate about the object, you know. So attention does that. But intention is this broader term in this context of motivation, you know, the reason why you want to do something. You know. So in general, and every intention, every thought we have has an intention with it, whether we're aware of it or not. And all of these things place karmic potentials or seeds in our mind stream that ripen in the future as happiness or suffering. So we collect a lot of this. And in every moment, we're also experiencing the ripening result of one of these potentials. Every state of mind is accompanied by, no, that's not what I wanted to say. Every moment of mind is accompanied by a state of mind called feeling. And in this context, feeling just means a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, or a neutral feeling. So it's not all the story that we have that goes with it. It is just literally that feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And that's karma ripening. This will make more sense in a few more slides. And it still won't really make sense, but we'll do the best we can. So in every moment, we're placing new potentials on our mind stream, and we're also experiencing the results of past potentials that are now ripening. Every single one of our actions, every thought, places a potential in the mind stream. So this is why on Sundays and stuff we talk a lot about mental habits. Because there's a reason why we have strong mental habits, because every moment of impatience or anger or lust or we are placing potentials on our mind stream. We're practicing it, and that makes us drawn to doing that again. So it's not that things that are happening around us don't factor in. They are the conditions for our seeds to ripen. But it's not like it's in the external whatever circumstances, that they're in control. It's our habits that really determine how we tend to respond to things. And we can choose to change our response with practice and all sorts of things. This is where the Buddha says we actually can turn things around for ourselves and make all conditions be a condition for peace and happiness, not suffering, or equanimity, where they don't disturb the mind. So there are 4 aspects of karma. Karma is definite. It increases. We don't experience the results of actions we did not do. And karma does not go to waste. So the potentials placed on the mind stream from the actions we've done will ripen if we do nothing to stop it. We'll talk about that. So karma is definite. From every positive action, there's a positive result. From every negative action, there's a negative result. It's just not instant. This can be over eons of time. But the more habitual, our habits, they kind of, if we have the habit of being angry, we're creating the cause to experience, certain conditions that have anger arising. We'll get to that. So much information. Karma increases. An effect of immense happiness may arise from even a small virtuous karma. An effect of immense suffering may arise from even a tiny non-virtuous karma. Since there's a lot of time between a potential placed in our mind stream and the time that we might meet the conditions for it to ripen, karma expands. So the result, unless it's, like a positive result, can be destroyed by anger. A negative result can be destroyed by purification practice. So we'll talk about that. But just like I'm sure we talked about it before, just like if you plant an apple seed, one little seed can grow into a great big tree with lots and lots of apples. Same with the effects of our habits of body, speech, and mind. The effect that they have can be much greater than the initial action. And we can see it really easily in ways in which, our habits form. So if something happens in the morning that really kind of annoys you, it's, the whole day can go from there. Just like you get more annoyed. Okay, no results of actions not done. If you have not accumulated the karma that is the cause for an experience of happiness or suffering, you will not experience the happiness or suffering that is its effect yet. So this means every experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, you created the cause for. No one else creates the cause for. So I can't do something that causes someone else to experience a result.
Wait, repeat again, sorry.
Like, I can't do something that would cause you to experience a result. I can be a condition that causes a seed to ripen, but only you created that seed that ripens.
What about if somebody...
Anything.
What about, so let's say, what about somebody hurt you?
Yes.
I didn't
Yes.
create...
You created the cause to feel suffering. I know.
Like somebody cuts you, you're in pain. That's like...
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
You
you're
created the
gonna suffer.
cause to suffer. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. It's an incredibly outrageous proposition. You know, it's like, but yet when we look at the physical world, we see it happening all the time. You simply can't plant a mango seed and get an apple tree. Never going to happen.
Right.
Doesn't matter what you do to it, it's never going to happen. Because it doesn't have the cause to produce an apple tree. It doesn't exist. Anger arises in our mind stream because we've got that capacity for anger. So things that are external to us are conditions for our habits to arise, for our potentials to ripen, but they're not the cause. The cause is we've created a potential that can ripen when it meets the right conditions.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So when you say that we're interconnected, right? All of us, and we all kind of like depend on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Even though everybody is causing their own, is their own effect or their
own pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral experience.
Right. If we're all interconnected, isn't it like if I do something, I will affect others?
Well,
in
because
one
you're
way
a
and
condition.
another?
Because you're a condition
okay.
for their seeds to ripen.
Okay, got it.
But you're not the cause of their seeds ripening.
Got it.
Like, in other words, you know how occasionally you'll hear a story about a car wreck or a plane crash and one person survives? That's because they didn't create the cause for that. Most of us create exactly the same causes for everything because we're really basically the same. We have the same needs, same desires, all this stuff, and we do actions driven by these desires and these aversions. And then we created the cause to share this space together. You know, we're just not all that different.
Yeah.
Now, the shape of things, we have the collective karma to experience this particular planet, this particular time, with these particular problems. So we'll go more into that.
Honorable Tentra, how would you define condition in this context?
A condition.
Yeah, it's a
Outside of
the most
you.
basic word. Yeah, something outside of you.
Yeah.
Because I was inclined to consider it a contributing factor, but that seems like too strong of a word.
What?
Well, they sometimes call them completing conditions. Yeah, you can, like when you plant an apple seed, you don't just need the seed for an apple tree. You also need sun, water, nutrients in the soil, all those. And all of those are conditions for that apple seed to take root and become a tree. Okay? But the substantial cause of that apple tree is going to be that apple seed. Doesn't matter about any of the other conditions. If you don't have that seed, it can't grow. In the same way, if we haven't placed a potential on our mind stream to ripen as suffering, we cannot suffer. That's what the Buddha is saying.
So that's how we would stop.
That's how we can stop
creating
ourselves.
our cause.
Yes. This is why suffering can end. Because we can learn how to quit creating the causes. It's not a fast process. Because it's all about the mind. and training our mind. Because it's our mind that drives our actions. And the minds that arise that we think, I didn't think about it, it's just there, just reflect how habituated we are to it.
Right.
Anybody else cold?
No.
Okay. So, it's unusual for me to be cold. That's just, if I'm cold, it must be freezing in here. Okay. Then our actions do not perish. Karma, the karmic potential that's on our mind stream, never goes away by itself. You know, it either ripens or it's in a potential state. Okay, so it doesn't go to waste. When the conditions, the circumstances arise, and you meet when the appropriate conditions arise for that particular potential, it will ripen. Okay. This is not linear or something like, last week, oh, you did such and such, so this week this will ripen. It's not like that. All the causes and conditions have
So
to
if
be
you're
there.
noticing habit of mind,
Yeah.
could you work on that particular ripening of that habit
Yeah.
with purification?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll get to that. Yeah, absolutely. Suffering can end, which means we can stop these potentials for suffering from ripening. But it's a skill. So, just as a seed without moisture, soil, etc. will not produce a sprout, in the absence of afflictions or disturbing emotions or negative states of mind, even though you have accumulated immeasurable karma in the past, there will be no sprout of suffering, because the karma lacks the necessary cooperating conditions. So one of the conditions are our negative states of mind. So when we clean up our mind, when we develop really positive states of mind and we become habituated to that, then the likelihood of a negative seed to ripen isn't there. It could ripen until we've realized emptiness and we're free of samsara. It's possible for those potentials to ripen because they're there. But if we keep our minds calm, positive doesn't mean,
Yeah, cheerful and all.
yeah, it just means that you're not going down the negative route. Anger and greed and those kinds of states. Then you're missing one of the conditions for suffering. So that's good news.
So when we're transforming problems, is that kind of a similar thing that we're changing?
It's not similar, it is
That
what we
is.
have to do.
Right, so we're actually changing our perception of that
We're
situation.
changing our mind.
Yes, I got it.
Yeah.
So that's why we're so, I don't know, I feel like we are also used to negative. Like, you think bad, you're always attractive to bad stuff. Not necessarily bad stuff, but
The Buddha said the reason we do that is
Uh-huh.
because of ignorance. That we're mistaken about the cause of happiness.
Okay.
We're mistaken about how we exist. And because of that, we follow our craving for happiness or pleasure or success, whatever it is. We're very, very much, we're in the desire realm. Our birth is called in the desire realm. And so we're just, enamored, habituated to sensory desire in particular. So, and also we're very averse to sensory irritation, things that we don't like. So we're constantly chasing what we do like, and we're constantly trying to avoid what we don't like, and we don't get it. We don't understand that we're actually creating the cause mostly for what we don't like,
right.
because we don't understand how things actually exist. So really the practice in Buddhism is mainly observing yourself. It's not mainly observing others. It's really about looking at our own mind from that we become habituated to observing what's going on in our minds, so that we have the opportunity to correct the direction that our mind is going in, because it's not skillful. And we want to be able to develop the habit of a observational technique that is not judgmental, that's not thrown by whatever it is you find in your mind, that it just kind of goes, oh, so that's what's going on. Well, that's not skillful, think I'll interrupt that. Or that is skillful, let's keep going in this direction. So it's a process of learning how to be gentle, but honest, and really look, as opposed to getting caught up and not noticing. Of course, initially it takes a lot of effort to develop this, this is what mindfulness is about, just remembering to do it. But then once you it's become your habit, it's just part of your background. You just kind of are always aware. So you kind of stop lying to yourself. You might still be lying to the world, but you're not, you're really aware of what's going on with you, with your motivations, or what's, if you're afraid, or if you're feeling better than, whatever it is. You're kind of aware that it's there. And then it's, from there, it gives you choices to try to, not feed the ones that are not going to end well, and to try to nourish the ones that will. Okay. So when you're talking with others, you're watching your own speech, watching your own motivations. When you act, you're trying to watch your own actions, and really checking your motivations. What we have a terrible tendency to do is, when we first start observing, is strengthen our ability to observe others. If that person, my friend, most of the questions I hear in class are about someone else. Oh, but I have a friend, or my partner, or my kid, or my blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not the focus of Buddhism at all. It can help you understand others, no doubt about it. But the focus, if you want to reduce your own suffering, if you want to create the cause for resources and good conditions in the future, you have to look at your own mind, because that's what's creating the cause. It's not the external conditions. The external conditions have an effect. They're the conditions that cause seeds to ripen, but they're not the important part. The important part is our own mind and our habits of mind. So the object of this practice is to bring the three doors, that's what they refer to them, the body, speech, and mind are our three doors. We want to put them under the control of wisdom, as opposed to being under the control of greed, or craving, or impatience, or anger. And we can do this by developing our skill of mindfulness, which just really means remembering, and introspection. So, being alert to when we've forgotten what makes life meaningful, or we've forgotten what we're working on, or we've forgotten that anger isn't useful, So, introspection is just the mind that's going, oh, you're getting off track here, so that you can get back on track. And this just, again, it takes a lot of practice of observing, and then being willing to kind of exert some effort into responding to whatever you've discovered there, and go, yeah, I don't think I want to go that way. So one of the things that's helpful is understanding what are what's called natural negativities You know, that basically, and this is pretty universal in all religions, what kinds of things naturally, what kind of actions of body, speech, or mind are going to lead to suffering. Maybe not right away. You know, you can steal and enjoy the, you know, whatever you stole. But down the road, it's going to cause an absence of resources. So basically the 3 that are physical: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. 4 of speech: lying, harsh speech, senseless speech. Slander, I guess, what's the difference between, well, I guess slander is about a person.
I
Divisive
don't know what
speech.
slander
Doing
is.
it.
Yeah, I'm more used to divisive speech, I guess.
Oh.
I guess slander, reputation,
Yeah, you're trying to,
they might
yeah.
not be there.
yeah. Harsh speech is like angry speech, or it's actually really, when you really think about it, all of these things are about the effect it has on someone else. If you're not respecting their lives, or their possessions, or their relationships, you know, or your, you know, your words, you know, so you know, divisive speech is where you're actually trying to separate a group that's harmonious.
Right.
You know. Harsh speech, you know, is basically if the other people who are hearing the speech find it aggressive or coarse or, you know, angry or something, then that's harsh speech. So it really comes from recognizing that our speech has an effect. And then senseless speech: gossiping, idle speech, you know, armchair politics, you know, all of that kind of stuff, where it doesn't really serve any purpose. It's not, you know, because it wastes people's time. It wastes your own time, and it wastes others' time. Then mental: it's covetousness, you know, wanting something that belongs to somebody else. Malice is this, you know, really wanting to harm. And then wrong view are things like ignorance. And so you have to kind of, this is from the Buddhist perspective, so things that, you know, like not believing in karma and cause and effect, not believing in past and future lives, you know, these are all kinds of wrong view. Believing that animal sacrifice will result in something good for you. These are considered wrong view in Buddhism. So. For an action to have real power, it needs 4 elements. It needs a basis. It means there's an object of your action, whether it's your thinking or whatever. There's an intention, there's the actual action, and then the culmination of the action. The action is concluded. Like, if I'm in war, and I'm a soldier, and I'm trying to kill the enemy, and the enemy kills me first, I don't get the karma of killing the other person if they're still alive when I die, because I'm dead. so that, you know, I moved on. So.
Well, you wanted to kill the person.
Yeah, so you get that. You
Oh,
get the
okay.
karma of wanting to kill.
Oh, okay.
You just don't have a completed act of killing.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't get, you know. Okay. And this is just the most powerful action. So when you think about how sometimes you kind of think, oh, I can't wait to see so-and-so, and I'm going to tell them such and such, and blah, blah, blah. That is creating a really strong negative action of speech when it actually happens, when you finally do say it, and, you know, and they heard it. They don't have to be affected at all for it to be, but they heard it. So, all right. The intention in this context means that you have an accurate perception of your object, the basis. So if I'm trying to kill Anthony, and I kill that Anthony instead, it's not complete.
Oops.
Sorry.
Yeah, oops. Big oops, but it's still an oops. It needs to be motivated by aversion, attachment, or ignorance. And ignorance covers a lot. You know, basically you misunderstand how things exist, that you grasp at the self, you know. So most of our motivations falls into these 3. And then this desire to do it. You know, So it's a difference between, like, you could create the mental karma of malice by just thinking about blah, blah, blah. But if you don't want to do it, you're just thinking about it, it's not going to be a complete action, you know. This is, you know, because, I mean, thinking about killing someone is different than killing them. But it's not a good habit of mind to practice. So it definitely carries, you know, a negative potentiality whenever you have those thoughts. And because, for one thing, it creates a habit of continuing to think that way, and continuing to think that way. And then in some life, and the right conditions arise, you actually kill someone. An action's also incomplete if we regret it immediately. So if, you know,
If I kill
say
you.
something harsh and immediately we regret having said it, that lightens the effect. And any action becomes heavier if it's performed under the influence of, you know, like intense desire, intense aversion or anger, or intense self-grasping. You know. It's also heavier when it's done joyfully, when you brag, you know, praise the action. Oh, this was a great action to do. When you do it happily, if you do it constantly, if it's something you do repeatedly, it gives, each time you do it, it gets a little more powerful. If you do it cruelly or painfully, doesn't this sound like mitigating circumstances, you know, for murder?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Forcibly causing someone else to do the actions. So say you put a gun to someone's head and make them kill someone else. You know, that's, you get the karma of killing.
Not the person that could.
You know, yeah, but it's a light one. Yeah, it's because their motivation won't be there.
Yeah.
So, and then without mercy to someone who's sick or vulnerable, you know, if you're taking advantage of their circumstances. This is true for both positive and negative actions. So if you know, delight in virtue and you're doing something really positive and you're happy doing it and you're, you know, just, you know, if your whole attitude is in it, you know, then it's a more positive, it's a more powerful positive action, you know. Obviously, you don't do positive actions cruelly or
Forcibly.
or forcibly. Yeah, I guess if you force someone to do a virtue, you know, those are funny things, like parents, you know, you're going to church today. So, you know, yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Now, the results from our actions. So sometimes you hear there are 3 results, sometimes you hear there are 4 because, you know, Buddhism likes lists. So, they're fruitional results. That is the result of a powerful, complete karma that actually determines the rebirth you take. So, you know, a human rebirth is a type of fruitional result. Results similar to the cause, and then environmental results. So we'll go into more detail. Sometimes you just hear about throwing results or throwing karma, which is your rebirth. It throws you into your next life. And then all the completing conditions that, you know, for everything else, like you have a precious human rebirth, but you're this tall and you have this, you know, gene, and you have, you know, good schools to go to or bad schools to go to, so there's a whole lot of stuff along with it. Fruitional results. So when all the necessary conditions are met, the karmic seed ripens into its main result, which is its throwing result. And that's the type of life. So this happens at the time of death. The time of death is the condition for your throwing karma to ripen for the next life. This is why we talk a lot about, you know, practicing, thinking about, you know, meditating on death, thinking about how the more we develop a positive habits of mind, period, means more likely that at the time of death our mind will also have a positive habit, you know, that will be what's there, you know. Whereas we practice a lot of anger, then, you know, the odds are good that we'll have an angry mind at the time of death, and that's a condition for a negative seed to ripen. So So understanding karma is a big part of understanding how to quit creating the cause for suffering. Results similar to the cause. So you have the results similar to the behavior, which just means you keep doing it. So, if you were a thief in one life, you meet those kind of conditions again in some future life, you'll keep up the habit of stealing. If you're violent, that's one of the results of being violent. If you're angry, it's one of the results of being angry. You have a tendency to be angry, and you bring this with you. So this reminds me, which is really not fair, but I always think of Winona Ryder. Is that her name? Winona Ryder, when she was young and successful, got caught shoplifting. She had a shoplifting habit, and she certainly didn't need to shoplift. She had the money to pay for things. But this comes from a habit of stealing in the past. You just have the habit. So even if you can pay for it, you still want to take it. Mm-hmm. So it's, and we all have these habits in our mind stream. It's just a matter of meeting the conditions. Results similar to the effect. So that means we experience the result, like if we've been killing people in the past, in past lives, we might experience a shortened life in this life, because that's the effect of our killing in the past, is shortening people's lives or sentient beings' lives. If you have a habit of stealing, the results will ripen as poverty. You just won't have any resources. You'll be destitute. And it might be a situation like where in certain parts of the world where there's these fabulously successful conditions for certain people, and they're surrounded by slums. The cities are completely surrounded by slums. So that could be a dual result of having covetousness and stealing. So now you're just always surrounded by people who have more than you, and you have no resources. Environmental results are that even where the conditions of where you are, the place that you are, has difficulties. So the environmental result of lying is that things do not turn out well for you, no matter what kind of work you do. So some people, have great ideas, they work hard, they do everything they need to do, but nothing is successful. The Buddha just explains that as having, it's the result of things like lying. So everything has, all of our karmic potentials, all our complete ones have a throwing potential in them that project you into the next life. And all incomplete ones have all the other results. So the complete ones have all of these results, and the incomplete ones have everything except the fruitional, or throwing, or projected result. Okay, so the fact that our experiences are the result of our past actions is not the Buddha rewarding or punishing us. Mm-hmm. Just like a flower is the result of planting a flower seed, it is simply cause and effect. It's what the Buddha observed with his omniscience of how things arise and what the causes are and what the effects are. There's nothing, it's just like the law of physics, law of gravity, it's just simply the way things work. And this is really important to remember. It's not that there's someone who's more powerful than you going, you deserve this. Not about deserve, it's simply about cause and effect. It's no different than planting seeds and having trees arise or not arise. But we can choose. This gives us the understanding cause and effect helps us start recognizing what habits we have that aren't going to turn out well.
Yeah, try to change now, like in this life, right?
Yeah. Set to the, start working on your habits so that the good habits start becoming stronger. Because we also have all the good habits. You know, we're kind, we can be patient, we can be generous. All, you know, we have these good qualities also. We have compassion. Sometimes we get hooked by, you know, it's not fair. Sometimes I get hooked, but it's not fair. But it really is just, that's why they call it the law of cause and effect. It's not somebody judging, deciding what ought to be this or that. This is the way, with the meaning of when Buddhism says, you know, that our mind is the creator of our experience. You know, so it's what drives our actions of body, speech, and mind. It's what keeps us stuck in samsara, in this cycle of constant ignorance and rebirth. So if we live as if karma does not exist, and then find out at the moment of death that it does exist, or the moment after death, the next birth, it'll be too late. So we really want to use this information to inspire us to do things a little differently. So one way to think is that when pleasant events arise, or we experience pleasantness, to really think, I am experiencing happiness because I carry the seeds of happiness in my mind. That I have placed the potential for happiness, and now they're ripening. And if we want more of those, we can plant more positive seeds to ripen. When suffering arises, we can say, I'm experiencing suffering because there are seeds of negativity in my mind. You know, so it's just, you know, instead of trying to always go outside of ourselves and find fault with the circumstances or other people or whatever, we can start accepting that we have some responsibility for the fact that we're experiencing negativity, that we have the feeling of suffering or dissatisfaction or stress. So we want to know, what can I do about that? Okay, questions before we jump into the next topic, which everybody's looking at.
So when you see a family that is all like crazy and with abusive father, and then you see the kid that turned out to be so good, and so then that's because that person evolved and is not carrying so many.
Well,
right?
Yes. I mean, you know, I wouldn't call it evolving because that makes it sound linear.
Oh.
You know, which it really isn't. It's like, it's linear in the sense that if we develop our good habits, if we make them stronger in this life, and then at the time of death, we have the condition for a good rebirth, then we have good conditions again to keep strengthening them. But until we remember, you know, I mean, it's like, so we have these habits, but again, we'll have to choose to follow those habits, you know. So, you know, it's not necessarily that it just keeps going up and up and up and up, you know. But it is a good sign.
Okay.
You know, so, and it's one of those things to me that shows there's evidence that just because you're in certain conditions doesn't
Right.
mean you have to respond to them in certain ways. That we actually can choose how we respond. And that our habits matter, you know, so that, you know, so you see children who don't respond to the chaos around them
Right.
with like chaos. You know, they respond differently. They have compassion, patience. You know, they just practiced that in the past. And somewhere they probably learned that the skillful response to negative conditions is patience. Yeah.
I have a question regarding environmental results.
Yeah.
So I think, does it matter just, no matter how hard you try, you just can't?
If your
Okay,
karma
I
for
understood that.
lying is ripened.
I'm sorry, what?
If your negative potential for lying has ripened, that's one of the possible results. say you're, you know, or it's easier for me to think of stealing, you know, but say you've been a thief in many lives, and then you so eventually you get born where you're the environmental consequences of that action ripen. So it may be that you're born in an area where crops won't grow,
Okay, got it.
you know. So it's just that you also have difficulties in the environment you're in. So like one of the, you know, so like for an animal rebirth, you know, say you get, you know, reborn, so say first you kill someone. So you go to the hell house, straight to hell, you know, blah, blah, blah. Then, it's like Monopoly. And then we, you know, so that exhaust, the projecting karma that sent you to hell, exhaust, okay? And so then after a while, you know, you finally, some positive seed ripens and you get a, you know, or more positive in the hell realm. And you're born as an animal. But because you were killing, you might be born as a tiger, you know, something that kills, as opposed to a vegetarian what?
Right.
Horse.
But how are you going to
Horse.
get better? Because tigers have to kill to survive.
Yep, so that's why when you have a human rebirth, you really want to work on this
Oh.
habit.
Okay.
Because when you're born an animal, that's why an animal rebirth is not a precious rebirth. Because you don't have a sophisticated physical support for your mind in order to work with it. You really are just following your habits.
Yeah.
And now you've got the condition, like you said. So a tiger has to kill to survive. You know, in spite of sometimes our children's stories imply that they can somehow get over it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's not true. So, but you know, it's this. But then say, you know, some animals have a rebirth where they're blind. You know, they're service dogs, or they help the blind, or they, you know, they're police dogs.
Canine.
You know, all that kind of stuff. So you know, that's you know, they have the actual opportunity for virtue in this life. Yeah. May not be complete virtue because their motivations might not be the same, but it's still, you know, I mean, we all see animals that want to help, you know. So, you know, this is good news. But it takes you know, one of the reasons why human rebirth is considered so valuable is you have a sophisticated physical support for your mind. You can really investigate, analyze, remember, not just act out of, you know, habit. You really can pause, step back and go, nah, I'm not going to do that. I mean, we've all learned how to do different things differently. We've all changed habits. We've all developed habits. You know, we can really work with our minds. You know, so that gives us a lot of power. It's just that, you know, what's one of our habits that we have to kind of set aside? We're in the desire realm.
Craving.
Craving. How about instant gratification? Karma doesn't work that way. So,
Yeah, everything is like that right now.
Following, acting on that craving instantly.
and so we can do it with, you know, sensory things. You know, we can act on our cravings, and you know, oh yes, chocolate. You know, and then, you know, after the 17th chocolate, chocolate, it turns into suffering. But it's just
Suffering.
that's called the suffering of change. That even what we consider pleasure is just the suffering of change. You know, when you have craving for chocolate, you're suffering. And then you have the chocolate, so you're relieved from that suffering of the craving. It's just the suffering of change. And then you eat too much chocolate and you hate it again. You're suffering.
That was the hardest thing to learn. Suffering.
The suffering part. Yes.
Suffering of change. Yeah.
So the suffering of change. Yes. So these are the things we try to get familiar with. So yes. So but instant gratification, or this idea that, or instant karma, that's a complete misunderstanding about how karma works.
Right.
And we can see it in the world. You know, it's not like even in, you know, in the physical world, you know, a lot of conditions have to come together to bear fruit. It's not generally instant. Yes, you shoot someone with a gun and you have a good shot, you're going to kill him. You know. But how many conditions had to come together for you to have a gun, to have the opportunity to shoot the gun, to know how to shoot a gun, to have the motivation to shoot a gun, to have a motivation of malice, you know, whatever. I mean, there's so many things that come into play for that action to happen. And any one of them are missing, it probably won't happen. You know, everything is a dependent arising, and it's dependent on quite a few things. It's not just one thing. So one of the conditions is that we have a mind with potentials on it. So if we have the potential for, if we have the habit of anger, that's one of the conditions that's going to make anger a likely response in certain conditions. Or if you practice it a lot, maybe any condition. So if you have a tendency to, have a habit of looking at the negative all the time, you think, oh, this is going to happen, then that's what you see. You don't even have you're an upside down pot now to see positive things happen. You can't see them. You've already decided it's going to be negative. So we have a whole thing on karma, a whole module, because it's interesting. But you don't really have to get caught up in. Karma's considered an extremely hidden object. That only someone like a Buddha who has omniscience, who can know all the past lives, can actually see all the causes and conditions that had to come together for this to arise. So there's, so basically though, it's really understanding this idea of that karma's definite, that positive things lead to positive results. Negative things lead to negative results. And then you can investigate positive, what does that mean, positive and negative? Basically, in Buddhism, positive means it leads to happiness, and negative means it leads to suffering. So that doesn't help. So you have to do a little more investigation, and think about, what actions. And then you have to really think about it. And this, because our self-interest comes in there and clouds our mind, and so we kind of don't notice the things that, we don't really investigate how those words that we're saying might be a negative speech. Because we're trying to manipulate something out of someone for our own ends. And we've hidden it under our rationalizations, thinking that, oh no, but this really is the best thing to do. When it's really about self-interest. It's really what we want to do. But we have all these reasons why, it's what everybody should do. So we have to develop our observational skills, our awareness, our self-awareness, and our honesty about our mind, and keep looking. Why? So we can kind of get underneath to make sure. So we can understand why manipulative speech doesn't turn out well in the long run. Doesn't mean there aren't, but also what's, well, never mind. See, I'm going to get myself all caught up in karma. We're going to not do that. Other questions, thoughts, challenges?
I have one more. Sorry.
Good.
So positive habits would attract positive. When they say like attraction, like energy and stuff. I do believe that, because I feel sometimes when you do so many positive things, you do receive positive results. Not necessarily through the same person or same path, but you do receive it. Is that?
Well, part of that, I think, it's about conditions. Just like someone who's so focused on the negative has trouble seeing the positive, someone who focuses on the positive sees the positive.
Oh, okay.
So they get to experience that more, just because they're open to it. They notice it. They don't zero in on the negative. They zero in on the positive, so they can always find the positive. So in that sense, and yes, the more you do have positive thoughts and motivations that are driving your actions, the more likely you're creating conditions to not necessarily have positive things right ahead, but your whole attitude, you won't meet conditions that changes that habit.
Oh, okay.
you know, because you've developed a habit of looking for the positive, you know. Just like people can always find, you know, if you have a habit of negativity, you can always find something wrong, you know, because you're looking for it. And we think that it's not us that's doing it. It's the circumstances. But it really is our habit that's looking.
Yeah, so basically we can be not happy, but we should be optimistic.
Well, we should understand that we have some power. Things don't have to stay the way they are forever. Because if we change our habits, the results will change. You know? So it's sort of like we can, you know, be hopeful because we have the capacity for change. We know that. So we can develop some confidence that if we learn about, you know, what is more skillful action and do those more skillful actions, then we will experience better results. But if we're holding out for those better results, you know, it's like, yeah, they have to change first. That's not a good strategy, you know, because we can't control other people or the events, but we can start having an impact on our response to them, you know, so that they don't shake us so strongly, that we don't get all hooked whether or not things go our way or don't go our way. So we can have a lot more equanimity, just kind of like, okay, whatever, you know, we just can flow with it and not have an automatic reaction of not fair or I don't like it, you know, it has to stop now, that kind of, you know, reaction, as opposed to just saying, oh, well, this is what it is, it's temporary, it's impermanent, this is why remembering impermanence is helpful, you know, I'm going to die, so it can't last forever.
Oh my God.
You know, you have to stretch it sometimes. You know, so. But you can create the cause to repeat it, so you don't want that, you know. But it's really just trying to develop a habit of looking, you know, what's going on in my mind? Is that a good direction? Am I going in a way that's, you know, because, you know, we're not stupid, you know. And if we're gentle and honest with ourselves, we can kind of go, oh, let's pause here for a moment. Let's see if we can try something else, or at least not act from this negative state. Yes.
Or if you find yourself saying something you realize you shouldn't be saying, you could just say, stop yourself and
Yeah.
excuse me, I didn't mean to say that.
Right. You know, and we kind of go, oh no, I'm going to start that sentence over. Or let's start this conversation over. Or, you know, you step back, you know, and just kind of go. And when your mind starts to go, you know, just whatever story it's creating, if you realize, oh my goodness, no wonder I'm miserable. I have just been doing nothing but badmouth everything today. You know, I mean, and just take responsibility that has an effect. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mind's a mess. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
My examples
I'm sorry.
clearly show that.
Say I'm sorry.
Yes, you can say I'm sorry. You can get much better at communication. And part of that is being able to be humble, to be able to go, wow, I started this conversation off in a terrible direction. I'm sorry. That's not where I want it to be. But I have, you know, this is my habit. I'm trying to change it. So let's start again. That takes a lot of acceptance of where you are. You know, to be able to just say, okay, this is where I am. I'm not very good at this. So, you know, can we start again? It's, you know, with me, my first thing was just being able to say, I wasn't listening. I'm sorry. I really wasn't listening. Can you please share that with me again? Because I want to hear you. You know, because I get, you know, my mind's off in something else. And I realize I really wasn't listening. You know, sometimes we can fake it. Because we got enough of the words. You know, we can kind of, you know, but what good is that? You know, and I haven't actually hurt someone. And we may be misinterpreting or putting words in their mouth or whatever. So, communication's hard. But we shouldn't make it harder by pretending we're listening when we're not. So that just makes it harder. So, anyway. So we want to go to purification tonight? So one of the things when you hear about karma is you want to learn how to fix it. So one of the ways to work with our past actions, if everything is placed a potential on our mind stream, so you've experienced some suffering in this life, right? Well, the odds are good that you created more of that. That you didn't just yell at someone once, you yelled at someone several times, and so you created the cause to receive that in the future. Or if you don't have resources, the odds are good you've been miserly more than once. Whatever. Okay? So, by practicing what's called the four opponent powers, I've heard it other ways too, but we can prevent those potentials from ripening. Initially, of course, it depends on the power of your mind. You can weaken them, or maybe have even no effect. But it's about developing the habit of purifying. This is a practice that, in our tradition, the Tibetan tradition, they recommend you do every day before you go to sleep, is you purify your negative actions from that day, so that they don't build up, like for eons. So, since beginningless time. But as you practice and the more powerful you get at the four opponent powers, the stronger your ability to prevent things from ripening. Okay. So whenever you do a purification, whenever you do anything, you want to set a positive motivation. So when you're trying to purify, you want to think about the reasons for why you might want to purify. And one of them is you don't want to experience suffering. That's reasonable, whether it's physical pain or mental unhappiness. And then you recognize sort of your equality with everybody else. Everybody's the same way. Nobody wants suffering. Everybody wants happiness. So to whatever extent I can develop the good qualities of my mind and turn away from the negative mental states, to that extent I can benefit others, because I won't be harming them, I'll be helping them. And even just not harming helps. So, that it's always nice in your motivation to think of others. So I practice this not just for myself, but for all living beings. Those close to me, strangers, and even those I find disagreeable or harmful. So this is just an example of how you can try to hit all the bases in your motivation. That you don't want to experience, the reason. I don't want to experience suffering. And I'm not alone. Every sentient being, every living being doesn't want to suffer. And that there's a cause. If I can develop my good qualities and minimize my negative qualities, I can benefit myself and others. And that we want to do it for that reason. That we're not just doing it because it's just for ourselves. We want this to ripple out to benefit others. So one of the four opponent powers is reliance, sometimes referred to as, reliance. I can't think of it. There's so many translations. But you're relying on the teachings. So this is a practice the Buddha said, so we're relying on the teachings for a method. We're also relying on the teachings to say, it's possible to purify your past negative actions so you don't have to experience the suffering that you created the cause for. That was a wordy sentence. So we're relying on a method. We're relying on people who have more experience than we do for that method. So one of the things we can think about, and this, obviously, like I said, this course just jams everything in, doesn't go into detail, but one of the things we can start to have confidence in is our Buddha potential. The Buddha said everybody can become a Buddha. That he was just like us, started exactly the same way, with, craving and all those things. but we can learn to quit creating the cause for suffering. So we have this capability. We don't have to have doubt about that. It's this, we're relying on this from the teachings. So we're not only relying on the existing, the existing Dharma, the teachings, the existing Buddhas, we're also trying to rely on our future Buddhahood, because this is how we get there. I can only develop my mind to its utmost extent by relying on other living beings. So this is the second thing we rely on. They are the basis for developing loving kindness, compassion, patience, all the qualities I value and admire. We only develop our good qualities based on the needs of others. Nobody needs anything from us, we're not going to develop our good qualities. And when we purify, one of the things that we're relying on is our regret for harming others. So regret. So in general, like if you were doing a daily practice of purification, then you're thinking about that day. What did I say today, do today, or think about today that I regret, that either harmed others or, strengthened my habit of impatience or anger or whatever. I mean, because sometimes we do these things by ourselves. We're driving down the car and we're really impatient, but we don't do anything. And fortunately, nobody else is in the car to get that negative energy, or hear your whatever you're thinking. So you can just think, oh, I was practicing impatience today. And this will harm others. The more I practice it, the more it blurts out, when other people are around. So, even when I'm alone, this has that consequence of strengthening that habit, and I regret it. If it's something you actually do to someone else, you say harsh words, or treat someone in a disrespectful manner, whatever, then you've harmed them. So you want to sincerely regret from your heart what, their hurt from how you treated them.
And let them know, right?
If you can, if it's appropriate, I mean, if you're remembering things from high school, you usually can't apologize. I mean, or it wouldn't have any effect. But the main thing here is to really feel regret about the harm. And this can be also, the harm to yourself from practicing a habit that you want to give up, but also the harm you've done to someone else. And one way to do that is picture the times when you've heard those words or someone's treated you that way and you've been affected. You noticed it, whatever, and you were affected. To remember how that felt. And then go, I was the condition for that today, for someone else. And I'm sorry I did that. So you really want to try to make this as specific and concrete as possible so that you feel it. So you're not just saying words. So it's a real, because the whole point of this is to transform your habits of mind. So it's not going to have any transformative effect if you're just reciting the words. You're not going to do anything differently. So you really want to feel that, slap in the face. And my words have slapped many faces in my life, and I'm really sorry about that. It's like a nightmare. But it's just, so we really want to be able to just accept responsibility for the harm we have done. And then you kind of expand it. Well, if I did it today, you can bet I've done it many times in the past. And so you kind of regret the whole thing, So, and you try not to be flippant about it. But at least start somewhere. Just kind of go, okay, yes. Because sometimes our embarrassment about our habits can cause us to not want to feel it heartfelt. We block it. Our embarrassment prevents us from, feeling the harm that did. But you're alone. You don't generally do this out loud with others present. So you don't have to feel, that it's, This is why gentleness is so important, and compassion for yourself, because we all do these things. We all hurt others. So we want to, and, you know, the good news is we want to stop. So you do whatever you can do to help make it heartfelt, but it's not just by route, whatever it's called. So you kind of review your day when you're preparing to purify. So at the end of the day, you just kind of look at your day and kind of think about what happened. This, again, brings you, you know, the more mindful we are during the day, the more we'll remember. And then we want to do a remedy. So we want to act on the mind of regret. So you can apologize. Perhaps you were stingy with your time. Somebody needed your help or needed you to listen and you just couldn't be there for them, so you make up for it. Perhaps you need, you know, you're miserly, so you give anonymous donations or something. To the center, of course. We always do. Center. All right. Or we can, and there's some ritual practices we can do, you know, so there are mantras we can say, there are practices we can do to do a daily purification. But what's important is when you're doing them, you have to have that regret and that determination to change this habit. So like we recite the 4 measurables on Sunday, you know, that can be your remedy, that you recite the 4 measurables and you really, you know, you think about that and you recite it many times. So this is just an example. Just as I wish to be happy, to have a peaceful, relaxed, joyful mind, so do all other living beings. May they all experience every happiness they wish. May they have the causes for all future happiness in their minds. I myself will cause them to abide in happiness. Please, teachers, bless me to be able to do this. So it's this idea of taking, you know, that acknowledging that everybody wants the happiness and doesn't want suffering. So I want to be a condition for their happiness instead of being a condition for their suffering. So it's really trying to get your mind in that place. So whether you're doing a Vajrasattva mantra or you're doing, you know, whatever you're doing, reciting the 35 Buddhas, this is the kind of mind you want. This is this mind that really recognizes you know, that we harm each other and that we're all the same and we want to stop it. And then the last opponent power is resolve. These powers are opposing the negative potential. That's the idea behind 4 opponent powers. So without the determination to change, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. So the last step is to really try to make the determination to not do this for a certain length of time. Whatever's realistic for you. If you have a powerful habit that's really hard for you to control, then you want to limit your promise because you don't want to lie. So you just think, you know, like at the next meeting, I'm going to try to hold my tongue. You know, whatever's, you know, something that you think you can manage, but then you're going to have to remember. So sometimes you write these things down, you know, if it's something that's, you know, that you, like say the staff meeting, it only happens once a week and, you know, you lost it during the staff meeting, you know, today. You have, you know, you might make a promise about the next time that you're going to try to do something differently. So then you might have to put it in your calendar so you remember that you know, you made this promise to try to do better, to help strengthen your resolve. So regret and resolve are the 2 biggies here. You know, is this, because this is, after all, about changing the mind. So that determination to put in the effort to do something differently is very important. And making it realistic. You really do want to, you know, like my impatient one is about 2 seconds. You know. It's not really. Sometimes I go for, you know, while I'm asleep. I'm kidding. I'm being too hard on myself. Okay, so. But this kind of habit helps us remember, so that we do this at night. Then the next day, we're more likely to remember, yeah, that's right, I really don't want to, use sharp words or act like everything should go my way, and, so I have, I can be impatient because after all, the world revolves around me. So, that I'm really trying to let go of that habit. And then I throw this one in. I'm not the only one who throws this in, but it's always good to rejoice after you purify. So you can rejoice that you did the purification practice. Oh, yay! But you can rejoice about anything you did in the right direction that day. So any effort you made, any of your good qualities that showed up, So, you don't want to forget those, and you definitely want to notice them. So that, because this is what we were talking about earlier, if you have the habit of only observing your negative qualities, you will miss your Buddha potential, which are all your good qualities. We have that capacity, so we want to notice them. Not for pride, not for ego, but just to give us the confidence that we can, create the cause for happiness. We have that capacity. Because we all have moments of compassion and patience and kindness and love, we do that. So, and this is a wonderful thing. So we want to feel good about it.
I too find the rejoicing so wonderful. And then if we remember too to even think of rejoicing in the ordinary beings, right? Action.
Everybody.
Because this is so helpful too, because we can think even like the animals or our own animals or our partners or the people we don't like, right? And then the holy beings.
Yeah. Yeah, and we get merit for that, so
Yes,
there's all
yes.
sorts of bonuses here. So, so yes, I mean, so this is, and it's also, if you have a tendency towards despair about the state of the human race or the planet, it can be really good to remind yourself every day about, in every moment, you can just sit there and go, somewhere in the world, there are many people teaching a child something. There are many people helping someone who needs help. There are many people who are using their skills with health or healing or with, that they have money and they're being generous and they're, that we can absolutely 100% confidence that that's going on too. And we can rejoice about that. And it's all over the world. So it's this, and all the mothers, whether they are, human mothers or, puppy moms. It's like, there's unbelievable acts of kindness and sacrifice for babies happening. So, that's something to rejoice in. And then the fact that there are teachings like this that exist, that there are, enlightened beings that are trying to help us figure out how to create better conditions for ourselves and each other. So, and this gets us in a habit of, of this past and future thing. We rejoice in all the things we've ever done, that other ordinary beings have ever done, that enlightened beings have ever done, that they're doing now, and that they'll do in the future. It's 100% guaranteed. Kindness is not going to end tomorrow.
And it helps us look for it and see it too in the small ways.
Again, this is reinforcing the mind. We want to direct the mind in positive directions. And so one of the ways to do that is to notice our coworkers doing something nice, our partners, our kids, It's really can change your attitude. Or if we're just indifferent. So we just don't really notice what anybody's doing. We're just plodding through our lives. It can, change that habit as well. So it's about, so the purification practice is about regretting the harm we've done, relying on a method, relying on the teachers, relying on our Buddha potential, relying on our desire to change, relying on sentient beings, and then have a remedy. And then set a resolve for a certain realistic length of time. And you really do start small, And then you can also pick a particular thing you want to be working on this month, just kind of like, you look at your day and you clean that up, and then you kind of, you have a particular thing you're trying to work on. I'm going to try to not speak when something. I'm not going to gossip. I'm not going to judge others out loud. I'm going to try to interrupt judging others in my mind. So, whatever it is. So you can pick these things. I'm going to quit focusing on the negative, which will help your health too. I mean, catastrophizing is a definite problem for our bodies. So. And then at the end, after you've done whatever practices you do or whatever good things you do, it's helpful to dedicate. So what you're dedicating is those positive potentials that you placed on your mind stream. These are going to have a result. You're sort of giving your results away. You're hoping that they will, benefit others. And if you want to stretch it as far as possible, then you think about them not exhausting until there are no suffering sentient beings at all. So you're putting it sort of like, the description they give is that, like if somebody has if this sampa is what the Tibetans tend to eat, which is like an oatmeal or something. It's made out of
Barley.
Barley, and they put butter and stuff in it. But that's their camping food and their daily food. It's their tortillas or their dinner rolls or whatever. It's their a staple. So the better the sampa is, the lighter it is. It doesn't, you don't see a lot of dirt and things in it, And so they have black sampa as well. And so poor people eat black sampa. And so if you're traveling with someone, and you pour your little black sampa into the big bag of really nice good sampa, and say, well, I'll only share your sampa until there's just no black sampa left. Guess what happens? Picture the bag.
That all turns black.
Well, it just all mixes in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you're going to be hard pressed to find any that doesn't have at least one grain of that black sampa. It's how you can stretch out. You can stretch the result out. So the idea is that if we just combine all of our merits in sort of like this great ocean of merit and dedicate it to it last until there's nobody suffering again, then we won't exhaust our merits.
Is that the same as the Great Enlightenment?
Yes. Dedicated to the Great Enlightenment. Yes. I mean, you could say that's just liberation or something, but I mean, let's not get picky. So, it's anyway. So, because if there are no suffering sentient beings around, we're just all in bliss. So it's not like, oh, well, we don't have anything to do now, we start getting bored. That's not what happens. So, anyway. But the main idea, though, is this always thinking, how can I be of most benefit? So you don't want to think short term. You don't want to just, I dedicate my merits for this life. May I, have resources until the end of this life. You want to think big. So. Again, this is a practice of being positive. So. And having the most benefit. Lama Yeshe, I was reading something, maybe it was in the Essence of Tibetan Buddhism, I was looking at that today, and You know, about this is something Americans should be good at because we always want the best, biggest, down and on. So use that habit to help you, you know, dedicate for the best, biggest, everything. So,
Supersize.
super size, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So, huge amount of material. But that's the name of the tune for this course. So next week, we'll be looking at when you finally decide that good rebirths are great, but like you want out. You want out of this cycle of suffering. So what you have to do that.
That outline was very helpful.
Oh, the Lam Rim outline?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it is.
This makes a tremendous amount of sense considering what your goal is for this second scope.
Yes. Yeah, so
Understanding
this,
it.
yeah, so this is about putting the pieces together to understand there is a method to all of this that we talk about. You know, that these steps get us somewhere. But the outline is somewhere.
Yeah, it's like the last one, right?
No, I didn't put it on a slide because it doesn't fit.
No, I mean on the attachments. You really had to scroll through them all.
Yes,
I don't-
and I cleaned it up today. Okay, so, is that visible, sort of? So really understanding that, you know, that we have limited time in this life with this really precious human rebirth, with good conditions, we want to use them well. And we may even have a limited amount of time within that, because like my biggest fear these days is, you know, that I'm going to have Alzheimer's, and so I need to really use what's left of my mind, you know, until it stops. So I have it on both sides of my family, and I just, you know, I'm trying not to just assume the worst. But anyway, but we really want to recognize our conditions change. So, you know, if today's a good day, use it well, you know, because it could change.
Is there a difference between wisdom in the context of like the 3 higher trainings and in the context of the 2 perfections?
Can't hear the question.
What was that?
Is there a difference between wisdom in terms of the higher trainings and then wisdom in terms of the perfections?
No. In the sense that in the 3 higher trainings, which are the activity of a person of middle capacity who wants to get out, you have to realize emptiness to get out. So the wisdom, you know, you also, you know, so the wisdom of someone who also has bodhicitta is more powerful, and it heads you to enlightenment. So it doesn't just get you out of samsara. It will get you out of samsara, but it has more power.
Mm-hmm.
But it is the wisdom of emptiness. So. Thoughts, questions, concerns, boredom? Yes.
I think I'm misunderstanding samsara. So samsara is just a cycle of constant, you live, you die, you live, you die, you live, you die.
Uncontrolled rebirth.
Uncontrolled. Okay, so like it just doesn't matter like your karma, like how much karma you've done. It's just.
It's why we're stuck here, is that right now we don't have, you know, our negative actions driven by ignorance. The underlying thing is ignorance. We keep creating the cause to go through this cycle of birth, you know, birth, aging, illness, and death. When you're liberated, you don't cease to exist, but you no longer are trapped in this kind of existence where you have to, you know, get sick, age, die, whatever. You don't have this kind of body anymore.
So do you go to like a spiritual realm, or do you
It's just
go
an
to
existence
cosmic
that
realm?
doesn't, no, it's the same place. It's a mind. We're just not limited any longer by these negative habits. It's a big subject.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, we're in samsara, which means a state of suffering, due to our ignorance and the disturbing states of mind that arise from our ignorance and our actions based on those. So because of our ignorance of how things exist, and this is what we'll be talking about next week, we grasp at the self, we grasp at, of all the cravings of the self, and then we just keep perpetuating this cycle. Enlightened beings are not trapped in this kind of body. They don't have any suffering. They don't create the cause for any suffering. They just have a state of bliss. And they pervade everything because they're not bound. They're not, we have this limited existence because we have a limited mind due to our ignorance. But we have the capacity to not have that. There'll be more. Stay tuned. Okay. Alrighty. We can just get back. Close all tabs. Metaphorically speaking.
I have a question.
Yes.
About this Thursday night class and the difference between the Tuesday night class and the Thursday night class. Because I'm wondering, because this pretty much concludes going through the Lamrim once on the Thursday night.
Yeah, you've done them all.
We did most of the modules, and the other ones we've read, the ones that we missed. So,
Well-
but maybe what we should try to do is catch those ones and come on that Thursday. Would you suggest just
Most people I know just take Discovering Buddhism 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times? Okay.
I'm thinking Thursday.
Too.
Taking third time. Okay, and then the Tuesday night class is what?
Okay, so the Tuesday night class is we're
Yeah.
going through the Bodhisattvas